Hello, students. Ahead of us reading 1984 by George Orwell, it is important that everyone has an understanding of what happened in George Orwell's life and what was happening in the world around him that helped inspire his views for this novel. For starters, George Orwell himself was born in Bengal, India in 1903 at a time when India was still a British colony. He moved to England as a toddler and grew up to attend preparatory schools on scholarship. He was teased relentlessly in school for being poor and being from a working-class family, and he grew to very much dislike social snobbery. His dislike for social class distinctions intensified when he joined the Indian Imperial Police in 1922. The Indian Imperial Police were a group of very hated police officers who helped enforce British rule on the people of India. In 1928, to help assuage some of the guilt that he created for himself by joining the Indian Imperial Police, he moved to London and then to Paris to live among the poor. In 1936, he went to Barcelona, Spain with the intention of writing about the Spanish Civil War, but instead ended up fighting in the war. At some point in the 1930s, he contracted tuberculosis, and by the time this novel was being written in 1948, his health was failing, and many believe that this impacted his tone throughout the novel. 1948 was also a time when many things were coming to light at the end of World War II. Totalitarianist regimes were showing up around the world in places like Russia, which was ruled by a dictator named Joseph Stalin, who was famous for his midnight purges, where he would round up hundreds of citizens at a time and kill them in deserted areas. This is an idea that you will see come up in the book again, so keep an eye out for it. The horrors of the Holocaust were just coming to light, and similar to Stalin, Adolf Hitler had just killed over 6 million people in his own country. Mao Zedong was fighting for communism in China, and he eventually would win this battle in 1949 and begin a very long oppressive regime. Other dictators, such as Francisco Franco in Spain, who Orwell had fought against, and Benito Mussolini in Italy, controlled citizens through propaganda and violence. These oppressive rulers inspired Orwell to create Big Brother. Big Brother was supposed to be the ultimate totalitarian leader who dominates all political, social, and economic activities. And Big Brother is essentially a big combination of everything that each of these rulers wanted to do. Socialism and communism were also two forms of government that were popping up in countries around the world. Orwell fought against Francisco Franco's communist regime in the mid-1930s. Orwell himself was a democratic socialist, which means he believed that the government, not private enterprise, should control the production and distribution of goods, and he was greatly concerned about the lives of the poor and working class. Around the world, working class people were beginning to fight for labor reforms. In the United States, workers were fighting battles for labor reforms that would eventually give them things like job security, overtime pay, health insurance, vacation and sick days, and child labor laws. In the midst of this, some U.S. and British workers began to turn to socialism and communism, thinking that they would solve all of their problems. In the midst of this, Karl Marx from Germany proposed that the working class people would have to revolt against their governments to establish a communist regime in which one party has all power over political and economic systems. However, in America, capitalist business owners eventually gave in to the workers' demands, and these socialists and the communists were kind of silenced. In Russia and China, however, communist revolutions did occur, and it was the beginning of a dark period for both of these countries. Orwell was also concerned about another invention that was becoming popular after World War II, something that many of you have probably seen today, the television. Orwell recognized the communication potential of this device coming out of a war where propaganda had been used to oppress thousands of people. He imagined that a television could broadcast propaganda non-stop and also transmit images back to the broadcaster. This is another idea that you will see come up in the novel, so keep an eye out for it. This is a lot to take in at once, so don't panic. But what's important is that you know you have these ideas in the back of your head so that when we do read the novel and when this does come up again, you understand where Orwell was coming from and why these things were frightening. I hope you found this informative, and we will discuss this more tomorrow. Have a good night.